Okay, good evening. I would like to begin the virtual Board of Education meeting of the East Maine School District 63. It is about 7:01. Due to the enactment of Senate Bill 2135, the provisions of the Open Meetings Act 5, Illinois Code 120, have been amended to include provisions for emergency situations such as COVID-19. Roll call, please.
Ms. Kwiatkowski?
Here.
Ms. Sack?
Here.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Gluskin?
Here.
Ms. Urban? Ms. Urban, are you here? Mr. Simmons?
Here.
Ms. Brooke?
Here. Okay. So, given our circumstances, that again, we are having a virtual meeting, public participation will be taking place electronically. There was a link that was provided to everyone to be able to provide a comment or a question. Have we received any?
I have not.
Okay. I would like to make note that the board, as well as Dr. Clay, we have received a few emails from community members sharing their viewpoints on wanting full-time remote learning, conversely wanting the hybrid learning. So I just wanted to share that, and I thank those in the community for submitting those emails. We certainly appreciate your feedback. Okay. Could I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second. So moved.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Sack?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Okay. And we are now at reports. And unless, again, someone can refresh my memory, but I do not believe I attended anything in the last month that someone else had attended. So obviously I have been spending my time reading a lot about the situation, keeping myself informed, and being a teacher myself. Chicago Public Schools has announced as well that they will be starting their school year remotely. So very, very interesting times. That's all I can say. So that's really all I have. Board members, anything to report?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't know if anyone has heard this yet, but IASB will be having virtual division meetings this fall. And because they decided to have virtual division meetings, this will allow for us to virtually attend other division meetings in the state. And there will be information about that coming out, I assume, as the time gets closer. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Urban just notified me she's having some technical issues and she will try to log on as quickly as possible. Okay, so board members, if no one else has anything to report, Dr. Clay, over to you.
All right, thank you. As you might assume, most of our time has been spent preparing the Safely Back to School plan that the board will vote on tonight. We'll be presenting the additional items that the board asked for at last week's meeting to get your feedback and suggestions. And since that's the big topic of the night, even though we're doing more business, I do have a little information I'd like to share. Since our last meeting, when we did propose to go remote, more and more districts, as you've noticed, have chosen to go the same route. Our high school district, Maine Township 207, is now going remote. Des Plaines 62, as Alex said, Chicago Public Schools, Palatine, Wheeling, just to name a few. And I know it's disappointing to everyone, myself included, to face more time without our kids in our schools. We know that they need to be there. But I do think it's an important thing to keep in mind that when the people who have spent their lives working in schools are more and more often speaking up to say that this can't be done safely at this time, I think it's a really important piece of information for us to keep in mind that those of us who do this are saying we can't do this safely. Some statistics, and these come from the Illinois Department of Public Health. In the last month, our state positivity rate has gone from 2.6 to 4%, and it continues to show a gradual upward trajectory, so going in the wrong direction. The state had the highest daily number of cases since May, nearly 2,000 cases reported. In our region, Region 10, our positivity rate has gone from, it is at 5.7%, and we've had 16 consecutive days of increases. Also in our region, we've had 10 consecutive days of increases in hospitalizations. So just some statistics to help explain my comment about why we feel this is not the time to safely bring kids back into schools. And that's all I have for my report, because we'll discuss this quite a bit more when we get to new business.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Clay. And just as to add on, if you don't mind, when District 207 had made their decision to go remote, Dr. Wallace, the superintendent, had shared, and it was really very shocking, the positivity rates in the communities that make up the population of District 207. And those positivity rates ranged anywhere from near 6% to near 12%. And I have to say I was quite astonished by that. Okay, Mr. Barry.
Yes, I just have a quick little construction update for you guys tonight. At the Area Learning Center, drywall and taping is complete in areas A and B, and drywall and installation is continuing in area C. Ceiling grid installation has started in area A. The epoxy floors in the area A washrooms were completed on Wednesday, and the prep work in the other areas started today. Ceramic wall tile installation for the sink areas is underway, and the painter has started to get the final color coats in the area A classrooms, and it's really starting to come together and look more and more like a school every day. The mechanical HVAC equipment is in the process of startup, and water is flowing through the geothermal well field, and no leaks have been reported. The landscaper has been laying out the playground, and the paver's been installing forms for more sidewalks and curbs. I'm hoping they pour those tomorrow or Monday. The light poles are scheduled to be set in the next 2 weeks, and the siding installation is scheduled to start next week. And that process will take a few weeks. At Gemini, a few little things. There's a faulty mat hoist in the new gym. They haven't been able to fix it. So between Tuesday and Wednesday, they completely replaced the unit. We had a brand new unit installed. The stormwater detention system for the field is completed and it's been backfilled. They started final grading for the track and field this week. The retaining wall along the retention pond has been completed. And you may have noticed if you've been driving by Gemini, but the concrete contractor from that job removed and replaced the ramp at door number 5. After it was inspected, the slope did not meet the current ADA code. So that was replaced to meet code. And we're still waiting to hear back from the painting contractor at Gemini to correct the roll clock graphic. And that is all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berry. Any questions for Mr. Berry? Okay. Okay, could I please have a motion to enter into closed session for the purposes of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Zek?
Yes.
That motion passes. We will enter into closed session and we shall return. Okay, and we are back. Could I please have a motion to adopt resolution BR 01-2021, to adopt resolution of intent to issue 3,300,000 working cash fund bonds for the purpose of increasing the district's working cash fund and directing that notice of such intent be published in the manner provided by law.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Camps.
Yes, I believe I sent a summary to the board, but if you recall, 3 years ago when we were putting together the financing plan for the district, which included $50 million to expand Gemini and build the Early Learning Center, we also said at that time that we needed to make sure we continue to issue on a periodic basis bonds to finance continued improvements to the rest of our buildings. And we were going to do that every 3 years. And that was based on our debt capacity. So believe it or not, 3 years ago, we issued $6 million. And it is now, the time is approaching where we would issue the next round of bonds every 3 years. So this round would be $3.3 million approximately. And basically the proceeds of the bonds would go into our working cash fund and would be used for continuous updates of the rest of our buildings. This is the first step in that process in which the board is voting on a resolution of intent, which basically says that the district intends to issue these bonds. It is not committing the district to issue them if we decide otherwise. The next step will be the September board meeting in which we will have a public hearing. And the last step will be at the October board meeting in which we will commit and say we are issuing these bonds. The proceeds will come into our working cash fund approximately mid-October.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Camps. Ms. Piazza, just so that you are aware, Ms. Urban did join the call. She is present now.
Okay,
Just
thank
so
you.
you're aware. Okay, board members, any questions for Mr. Camps? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Gluskin? Oh, Mr.
Sorry, I could not take myself off mute. I apologize. Yes.
Okay, Ms. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Sack?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Okay. A next small item on our agenda. That was a joke. Laugh along. Could I please have a motion to approve the Safely Back to School plan as presented?
So moved.
Hold on a second. Alex, I think you skipped the discussion section.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
I withdraw.
I thought they were merged together. Sorry about that. So we are here now to discuss the Safely Back to School plan. Forgive me. Go ahead, Dr. Clay.
No problem. So last week when we met, there were several things the board asked us to flesh out, add to the plan, however you want to word it. And so we're going to present on those first. And we're going to start with the support that you asked us to provide to our kids during remote learning. And so first up will be Jen Pacheco talking about our at-risk kids.
So in an effort to ensure that we're providing consistent ways of identifying students at risk for becoming disengaged, we went ahead and worked with our building administrators to develop the series of flowcharts that have been shared with you in your board packet. Just briefly, the charts provide a process to identify students at risk for multiple reasons, and then also a pathway by which staff can go ahead and problem solve to provide support for those students and their families. So when looking at the flow charts, you'll notice that all of them start with a triggering event, such as students not attending in-person sessions or being checked in for class by a parent, or even families that experience life-changing events such as a loss of income or housing. All of these things we know can impact our community greatly, especially during the global pandemic. We also considered the different steps then that staff could take in order to work with students and their families to provide the support, following multiple paths, and looking at the student's response to those interventions. Throughout the flowchart, you'll see different points of parent contact, all of which will be done via phone or virtual meeting, because we want to make sure that we are making that person-to-person contact and not just communicating over email. All of the information that's collected by teachers can be logged into PowerSchool, but we also developed a questionnaire for our administrators, social workers, and psychologists to use. You can find the questionnaire also linked in the board packet the way that a user might see it. And this questionnaire was developed so that it can adapt based on the input of those that are providing the information. So once a social worker or an administrator has identified the problem, it will take them to a second series of questions that can be asked, which will allow them to drill down a little deeper into that problem and identify more specific and targeted solutions for that family. Finally, we also work together as a team to develop an approach that's kind of tiered interventions, starting with some very basic things, just additional check-ins, additional supports, and then moving on to things that might be a little bit more specific and targeted to the student or the family, and bringing in community resources as well. Did you have any questions about our process or anything on the flowcharts?
I don't have a question. I have just a huge thank you, because this was something that was weighing very heavily on my mind, because we always have those students that just painfully do fall through the cracks. And this gives me some reassurance that we will be, I know we would be doing everything possible to get through with them. Don't get me wrong. I know that, but I love to see this. No question about what needs to be done if we reach that point in time. So thank you. Thank you for putting this together.
Anybody else?
So just to clarify, this would be a combination of like on the phone, continue with email, and in person if need be, correct?
Correct, Ms. Urban. We would start with a phone call or a virtual meeting just to get that person-to-person contact directly established. After that, we would probably ask the parent what their preferred communication method would be, knowing that some of our parents do prefer email due to work hours or other responsibilities. And then we would go ahead and use that to then follow up with them as needed.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Next, Aaron Sterling will talk to us about our English learners, the newcomers to the district, or to the country, actually.
Okay, so part of what we're going to be asking our EL resource teachers to do when they come back to school is to contact families of the English learners that are on their caseloads in order to introduce themselves, provide translation supports if possible, or find someone that can offer that service to them, and explain what their role would be in supporting their child in instruction. So for newcomers and low proficient English speakers, we will be supporting those students in small groups and one-on-one supports, doing video conferencing. So resource teachers will provide language development and differentiated instruction that's tied directly to grade level content standards, activities, and assignments. So we really want to encourage our EL resource teachers, and we're going to require it as well, to collaborate with the general education grade level teams and ensure that they're linking their lessons or supplemental materials directly to the teacher's pages in order to ensure that the students can easily access any supplements or differentiated supports on that page. EL resource teachers will also email students and parents directly if there are any additional materials that they feel that that child may need in order to support their grade level instruction. So we'll be sure that we'll be reaching out to our newcomers and our low proficient students and all of the students that we will be servicing. And again, our teachers work tirelessly to do this in the spring, and I have no doubt that they will do so in the fall, and also to ensure that everyone has their Chromebooks, their hotspots, and all their school supplies. So, does anybody have any questions?
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Urban.
Oh, I was just going to say this will be for any students that do have difficulty. This would be similar to the other plans for our struggling learners, where someone would reach out through email, through phone calls, face to face, whatever need be, to make sure that everyone is successful.
Yes, correct. And so what we are recommending is that rather than waiting for the to contact the students or the parents, we're asking EL teachers to go ahead and be proactive and contact them right away to introduce themselves and explain what their role is in supporting their child's instruction in addition to the classroom teacher.
That's excellent. I think we need to do that more. Yes, wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and now Aaron Roberson will discuss a couple different topics too.
Okay, board members, on the top of the second page with the document that you have in board docs, this actually came from a question last week, and so I inserted some examples for you. Obviously, our teachers have not officially returned back to their contract days in teaching, but what I did provide for you is for this anticipated plan for 63 online, there's a template that our teachers will follow to communicate weekly learning plans to our students and families. And what I provided for you are 3 exemplars that we have created for our teachers to have an idea of what the expectations are in terms of facilitating 63 online. You'll find an exemplar for our preschool students, our K through 5 students, kindergarten through 5th grade, and then our 6th through 8th grade students. So you can get an idea of what these learning plans will look like on a weekly basis and what you can expect as parents and students going forward once we implement this. So I provided some links for you. You can feel free to look at those and just take a look about what we anticipate all of that to look like and how our 5-hour day will be organized for different grade level bands. Also, moving on to the next piece is kind of extending what Jen Pacheco talked about, which was additional support for our at-risk learners. And basically, I'm just kind of reiterating the fact that the intervention model that we have in place during typical in-person instruction, we are working to facilitate remotely as well. Our intervention model is really facilitated through the multi-tiered system of support process, which is called MTSS. Our most intensive intervention, reading recovery, will continue to be facilitated by our literacy specialists and our interventionists at the elementary schools. That is daily intervention one-to-one with students for 30 minutes a day. That will continue to be an intervention that's facilitated for students that qualify and will occur within their 5-hour day. We also have small group push-in and pull-out intervention groups. That means that interventionists or literacy specialists will either push into a classroom while instruction is happening or pull out students to receive supports We continue to use a responsive model for that based on the needs of the students. And then, of course, differentiated instruction, which is the foundation of our instructional model, where educators support students through small groups and one-to-one support within the classroom. Obviously, for 63 Online, as I talked about last time, we have upped the amount of live instruction or synchronous instruction that students will participate in on a daily basis. And our teachers will use a combination of whole class instruction, small group instruction, and one-to-one support as needed for students. So basically what I was hoping to get across to all of you is that intervention model that students normally receive in-person instruction will continue to be received for students that qualify through our remote services. I'll pause there if anyone has any questions before I move on to my last point. Okay, and the last point I want to talk about, we discussed this at the last board meeting, is finding some ways for students to be able to connect with their teacher or teachers at the beginning of the school year, which is obviously something that we want to make sure happens for our students. So we had a chance to dialogue quite a bit as an administrative team with a lot of input from our building administrators. And we felt that we wanted to have a consistent approach to this so that we weren't allowing some of our grade levels different privileges possibly than our older grade levels. So we settled on a model that all of our students will have the opportunity to have virtual meet and greet sessions with their teachers. So currently the structure that we're looking at is that each classroom teacher at the elementary level will set up at minimum a 10-minute meet and greet session with each student in their class and the parents. At Gemini, that would look a little bit different. They obviously have a caseload of many teachers. So we would look at that meet and greet session to be with their advisory teacher, which with the schedule, they see that advisory teacher on a daily basis. So we felt that was a good point person to start the meet and greet sessions, and then obviously additional meetings with other teachers, schedule set up if needed. We also realized that some of our families might not have access to computers or internets prior to the start of the school year and might have to wait until they pick up their Chromebooks or their hotspots from the district to participate in that. So I know that our building principals will work with our classroom teachers to be as flexible as possible. Ideally, we would love for these meet and greet sessions to happen in the 5 teacher work days prior to school beginning. But I think we also know that we need to be a bit flexible and realize that some of those might have to happen after students and families get access to their district Chromebooks and their hotspots as needed. But I will pause there if anyone has any questions about our anticipated plan for meet and greet sessions.
I just want to say I like that. I think that that's nice. I think the kids will really like that, and I think the parents will appreciate that the extra time is being taken to set the stage on how this is going to be much more robust and a much better experience for everybody this fall.
Yeah, and I think just a side note to that, Mrs. Urban, is I do know that our teachers, I've had a chance to do a lot of Q&A sessions this week regarding our anticipated plan and things like that. And our teachers are committed to trying to find ways to connect with students virtually. So I concur with that comment. Ms. Anderson, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say, I like that as well. I think, I'm just thinking about my own children. I think one will be super eager and one will be super nervous, but that can be valuable for the teachers to kind of gauge that and kind of know the child a little bit so that they know what maybe challenges they could need to overcome with the virtual format. So I agree with it. I think it's a really good plan. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So that just to finish up supporting remote learning, Sean has some things to talk about with expanded learning.
I just wanted to share that we're working on staffing expanded learning, and we are surveying teacher assistants, asking them to indicate their interest in volunteering to work at the Family Resource Center, because that allows us to gauge both people's level of comfort and gives us some indication of what we might see when we open the expanded learning program, and what staffing will look like. And right now we have approximately 57 teacher assistants. At the end of last year we had 63. We have had a few resignations, and our preliminary results as of about 5 o'clock today, we had 18 of the 58 had responded, and 39% were not interested at all in volunteering. Another 5% had little interest. 16%, 17% were undecided, and then we had 22% who want to volunteer. So I took the numbers and just projected them out. If these percentages held true for everyone, and it looks like we'd have mid-20s that low to mid-20s for people who would volunteer or would be interested, and that would make it fairly tight in terms of the staffing. So we're just seeing, in terms of the numbers, we just don't know yet what the staffing is going to look like. But I should have a better sense in a couple of days. Any questions?
Sean, do we have anticipated numbers? Have we done any type of polling in terms of who would actually use the childcare?
Yeah, so Angie has numbers, and I believe we 110 to 115 range, but at this point, so I'm guessing we're gonna hit the max of 150 pretty quickly.
As of right now, we have 120.
Okay. And if we do hit the max, were we doing any kind of vetting, or is it just first come, first serve? Remind me.
As far as the participants?
Yeah, I mean, do we prioritize, first responders who have to be at work versus somebody who's at home all day and just doesn't want their child there because they're working from home, that type of...
We're not asking for proof of whether the parents are or are not have to go to work. But we do have in all of our marketing that we've put out that this is intended for those parents who must attend their job in person.
Okay, that's right. That's what I want to know. Are we doing it? Fair enough.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay.
No.
All right, so we'll move into the hybrid plan now. And before we get to the metrics, Jen Pacheco will talk to us a little bit about our self-contained special ed students.
So as Mr. Roberson discussed, the students that are part of the MTSS program as students that we consider at risk, another population of students that we would consider at risk during virtual learning are our students in self-contained programs. From our experiences last spring, we know that students in our self-contained programs did not engage in remote learning to the same extent as their general education peers. Oftentimes, the students in these programs require more tangible, concrete learning opportunities. They require direct instruction techniques that just really aren't readily available in a virtual setting. So with this in mind, we would like to offer the students in our self-contained programs at Washington, Melzer, Apollo, Nelson, and Gemini, whose parents opt in, hybrid instruction 2 days a week, starting September 8th. So depending on the size of those classes, we might have to break classes into 2 separate cohorts, an A cohort and a B cohort. Cohort A would attend school on Monday and Tuesday, with Wednesday as an opportunity to deep clean those classrooms and reset them. For cohort B, that would attend on Thursday and Friday. We would follow the hybrid hours that are proposed once we're able to return to in-person instruction. So for our elementary buildings, we would start at 8:15 and 8:45 at Gemini. And then in the afternoon, students would have those opportunities for remote learning, just as they would during regular hybrid instruction. We feel that by doing this, we'll be able to better meet the needs of some of these very vulnerable learners. And we would still be able to provide them that full 5 hours of instructional opportunity that their general education peers receive. So in the board packet, you can see a kind of sample schedule of what we were thinking that cohort might look like if there was a group A and a group B. And it's important to remember too that we can do this as long as we remain in phase 4 and there's no additional directives from ISB. Did you have any questions about our proposed plan?
I love it. It's not a question, it's a statement.
Okay, well, thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
So the next one and the big topic, I assume, is the metrics for reopening. So 2 things that we took the opportunity to do. One was, since a lot of what we're recommending is based on the fact that our statistics are headed in the wrong direction. We are on an increase, and we have been, like I shared at the beginning of the meeting, for a while now. And so the metrics that I put together are based on reversing that trend so that things are getting better and safer for kids to be in school. And also, we like the idea of doing a gradual return because one of the big concerns that we have is crowd control, trying to manage 500 kids in a building or even more at Gemini is concerning, and trying to keep all that under all the guidelines of social distancing and masks on and that kind of thing. So we started with our youngest learners who have probably the hardest time with online learning. Also, the ones that are less likely to spread COVID, and then worked our way up to our oldest kids who we know are also more likely to transmit the virus if they have it, and but also are more self-directed, so they would be the last ones to bring in. So the percentages that I used are just to express a trend in the right direction, so that the virus is going down. Everything on there is up for discussion and for adjustment. So I'll open it up to you guys.
Scott, I'm sorry. I looked at this earlier and I saw the metrics, and now I'm looking to the document that I clicked on and I can't find the metrics. What page are they on?
It should be in your executive content on board docs, I believe.
You know what keeps signing me out of board docs? That's why I don't see it anymore. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Give me a minute. I apologize.
Okay, no problem.
I'm having issues. We'll let somebody else go. Let me just, completely log back into board docs.
I think that I like the fact that we're doing a phase-in plan. And I'm also glad to hear that we will be starting with our youngest learners because I think they need that face-to-face sooner rather than later. And, honestly, it's anybody's guess in terms of whether or not this will be sufficient. And what I mean by that is this is so unpredictable that, I think we're being conservative. I like the fact that we're being conservative. And those are just my comments.
All right. I do not have it anymore in my executive content, and I'm signed back in, which is very odd.
I'll email it to you real quickly.
Okay. I apologize. I don't know what's going on. It was fine earlier.
Mr. Gluskin, did you check in agenda item 7.1?
I did. Let me go back in there. 7.1.
Email was just sent, Walter.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, my screen is cut off. It is in there. All right. I am having difficulties, not my computer. I got it. I looked at my phone earlier, and that's where I saw it all. All right. There we go. Okay. Thank you. All right. So now my questions. And I'm sorry, I don't need to jump in. If anybody else wants to go, please do so. And I can wait.
I think you're fine, Walter. Go ahead.
Okay. So the way I understand it, when I look at, so first of all, when I look at Region 10 in Illinois, and I look, it goes back to June 27th, where there was about a 5% positivity rate. But I also, we talk a lot about cases. The case numbers actually don't make that much of a difference as the positivity rate. Because back in March, where they were doing 100 tests a day, if you had a 30% positivity rate, you'd have 30 cases, right? If you're doing 50,000 cases or 50,000 tests a day, and you have a 1% positivity rate, you'd have 500, which sounds like a lot, but in reality, that's good because it's 1%. So what I'm seeing is when we were talking about going to school live or hybrid, the case or the positivity rate was just a little under 5% in Region 10, and now it's 5.8%. So it's increased about 0.9 to 1%. But if I look at the state of Illinois, if we're following the science, and I've spent a lot of time kind of trying to figure this out, we're still under the 8% threshold that says that you can open school safely, and the CDC is saying open school safely. It feels like we're being too conservative to me. Now, I also feel that this decision really shouldn't be in the hands of boards. It should be a decision made by governors or on a county level, because I do feel it's a very tough decision for board members. I will also say I think there's going to be some disagreement tonight in terms of which way to go. I am on the side of I feel it's safe to open schools. Everybody I've talked to has made up their mind whether it's a yes or no, but other school districts are opening. The Archdiocese of Chicago says they're opening schools. There have been some schools that have safely opened. Maine Township is bringing in all the kids during different days in the first few weeks. It just feels like we are following the crowd, and it's become everybody following each other saying it's not safe. I disagree with that. I feel it is safe to open schools. You can do it safely. Doctors work every single day. They wear masks. There was initially when people didn't understand how to protect themselves, a lot of doctors were getting sick, but the doctors and nurses I've talked to, once you have masks on, it is fairly safe. Can it be guaranteed? I don't think anything can be guaranteed. We don't shut down for the flu. This is about 2 times more contagious than the flu, from what I understand. But again, I do feel that, first of all, medical professionals should be making these decisions. It is unfair to local boards that there's no state or local leadership, because a lot of boards will probably err on the side of caution, but they don't really know what that means. We don't really know what it means to return safely. Everybody I've talked to, though, says a 2 or 3% positivity rate may not be achievable for years, because there will always be cases unless everybody gets vaccinated, at least 90%. 40% or more people said they're not getting vaccinated. So if those positivity rates that we are shooting for, the metrics, are too low, we will never really reopen schools for the foreseeable future. So I'm very concerned about making them too low.
Keep in mind that we were at a 2.6 positivity rate just a month ago. So
that's not what it says for Region 11. That's statewide.
Right, statewide.
Region 10, excuse me.
Right. And also what Alex brought up about our particular district, we do have communities that actually Des Plaines at least one time was considered the hottest spot in, at least in the suburbs. And there are areas of that town where there is 12% positivity rate. So our district is in a particularly high positivity rate area.
Yeah, again, I'm not a medical professional. I believe what I believe and what I've heard, and we will probably agree to disagree. And I will tell you that once the decision is made, I will support whatever decision the board votes for. But I'm a firm believer of there are safe ways of opening schools. Des Plaines was a leader because of some nursing homes, which is not schools. And, if you have a bunch of nursing homes in the area, and unfortunately, those are the ones that got hard hit, Niles and Des Plaines were leading. I've not been able to find it. I have a chance to follow up with Ken Wallace because I saw the same thing, exactly where he got his data from. Maybe somebody else has it. But technically in phase 4, my understanding is, in reading the data, anything under 20% positivity rate allows schools to reopen. Now, that might be way high, but that is, I believe, the way it's worded.
Walter, that is the way it's worded. I those of you that don't know me very well know that I don't like science, but I have spent a lot of time talking to my husband, who's a scientist, about the data and the trends and how that would work. I echo some of the concerns that Walter has with this metric even being achievable within the next couple of years, as a vaccine potentially might be made available. The positivity rates will most likely go up because the people that are being tested will be the people that did not get a vaccine. I think it's concerning to think that we need to get below that 2% when the state recommends a 20%. I think we're shooting a little too low there. I think that if we kept it at the 2%, I recognize that was like a sliding scale for the youngest learners to the oldest learners. I have a big fear that we won't go back in the next couple of years. And I guess I was curious where the metric was obtained, whether it was from a public health recommendation, where that percentage was derived.
It was purely out of to have a gradual return to school with a positive trend. That's all that's about. And not a positivity trend, but going in the right direction.
So I guess for me then, that doesn't represent the science. A positivity trend would be anywhere from where we are now going down. That would be reflecting that it's getting less. I guess I don't know how this would be achievable. And I guess I fear that if we vote yes, that we accept these metrics, that we're saying our kids won't have in-person learning for the next couple of years.
That is my concern as well. I'm also, I guess, a little concerned around when I read this carefully, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it says that decrease 7-day, the very last metric, decrease 7-day rolling average, 7 out of 10 days in the positivity rate as of November 20th with a maximum of 2.0%. And no classrooms have been closed due to COVID-19 infections in the preceding month. I don't think that will be achievable for years as well, because you will have some type of COVID infections, whether they are ones that don't have any asymptomatic or symptomatic infections. I don't think that's achievable either. And I was listening to the chief medical officer for the state of Indiana yesterday, and she said a COVID infection is not a reason to panic, but it is a reason to take action. It doesn't mean you should shut the school down. It means you need to isolate some of the kids that have been exposed, which I think is what we're saying in the overall plan. But it feels like, again, that last one, or last two, actually, excuse me, last three now that I read it, probably is not achievable this year or in the next couple of years, potentially, based on the medical experts I've talked to.
I guess I have a question too about if you could explain it to me. It says a decreased 7-day rolling average. would that include a stabilization, or does that mean it has to be continuing to decrease along those 7 days? Can it be, we're at a, what is this for kindergarten, a 3.5% and it stays that way for 7 days? Or does it have to be 3.5, then the next day needs to be 3.4, then the next day needs to be 3? Do you see where I'm going with that?
I do.
Could you clarify that?
It just means that the average needs to get to that point, not that it doesn't matter what happens in between the individual days in that 7-day rolling average.
So the average compared to before the 7 days, or I guess I don't understand. So
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking either.
Yeah, so I guess I'm wondering where you're comparing it to. So if Monday is 3.5, are we then saying at the end of those 7 days we compare it back to the 3.5? Is that?
Well, currently the way it's written is it only matters what that 7-day average is. So if it's 3.5% for the 7 days, the average is, then that's when kindergarten goes back. It's not being compared to anything in that particular, the way it's worded.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other question I have is, how do you plan to implement it? Okay, so it says as of, I guess I just want some clarification on the dates. As of September 20th. So then when would kindergarten start? If, say, September 20th, the 7-day rolling average was 3.5, would kindergarten start September 21st?
No, we would have to have some time. So that's something we'd have to determine probably 1 to 2 weeks after that.
Okay.
So just to play devil's advocate here, and it's not really devil's advocate, but I think we're all concerned about our students. That goes without saying. But the issue is also what's going to happen if a teacher gets sick. We have no subs. We have no people to be able to fill in. We don't. And this is across this. I'm sure it's across the country now. I know that when Dr. Wallace had presented his plan and part of the reasoning for deciding to go remote was that 2/3 of the substitutes that they count on a regular basis are no longer available to them. 2/3. That's huge. And I'm sure we're in a similar situation here. So, again, as an educator, I know in-person learning is best. I want to go to, I want to go to school and teach myself, but I have to tell you, I have huge reservations about it being safe. And therein lies the conflict, knowing what's best and knowing what's right.
Yeah, that's why I really do feel it is unfair to make local boards make that decision. It should be made on a state, county level, et cetera, on a region level, really. Because, I believe Park Ridge is still planning to start school in a couple of weeks. I believe District 30 is planning. I think District 28 is planning. Some high school districts are planning. Whether they start or not, who knows? But at this point, they're still planning to start. So they obviously face the same challenges. But as more and more districts go virtual, there will probably be more subs available. The other issue is, if truly 40% of parents are not going to send their kids to school and they will be virtual, you may not need as many subs as you think. But I don't know that I know other districts around us have polled their parents to say, you need to make a decision. If we are to start, we probably want to do the same thing, whatever the metrics are, so that we know if, all things work out well and October 1st, we're at a 3% positivity rate, we're ready to start. Will we get, 200 kindergartners or 20 kindergartners, right? I think we almost have to make parents make that decision now based on whatever plan is approved. Whether it happens or not this year, but at least we'll know what to plan for. Otherwise, I think it's a guess. Maine Township made people do that, and they are locked in, basically. I don't know if they're going to redo it if they're closed for 6 months or whatnot, but they knew exactly how many kids were going in person. I do know, and I feel it was higher than parents originally said. I don't know that for a fact, but in talking to some parents who We're like, I'm very scared, but I'm sending my kid. So I have a feeling we'll be higher than the 40 or 50% that said, I'm going to send my child. If the 60%, don't remember the exact number in the survey, it would be good to know that. But again, I think we will agree to disagree because there's a lot of different opinions in this. And I will not blame, or I cannot blame anybody for voting the way they're voting tonight, because it is a tough decision. And I really don't feel boards who are not medical experts or school officials who are not medical experts should be making these decisions. Because if you do read everything online today that the state of Illinois is posted, the CDC is posted, feels like it's safe to open schools. That's where I'm getting my information and talking to some doctors and stuff. But that doesn't mean it's a consensus. I've talked to people who are opposed to schools opening as well. Probably a 60-40 percentage if I was to say which, between doctors, parents, etc. that I've talked to, how many say schools should definitely open versus they definitely shouldn't. And that's kind of what's coming out on our polling numbers as well, and probably every district's polling numbers. I do know some schools that in Wisconsin are opening next week. So they have figured out a way of keeping it as safe as possible. Because my concern, again, is I do not feel we will get to these numbers anytime in the next 12 months. If we actually believe that we can achieve these numbers, I think we're talking 21-22 school year at best. Because I still don't know what's going to happen when 40% of people say, I'm not getting a vaccine. You're going to keep getting outbreaks. It's going to be like the flu. It'll be annual, and it'll be for a long, long time. That's every medical expert I've talked to pretty much seems to agree there. So that's my concern.
I understand what you're saying about the numbers and being able to reach those metrics, and what you're saying makes sense to me. I think for every situation where you can say they've gone back safely, you can show other situations where things didn't go so well. I think there's, it's 50-50. My concern is the domino effect. It's kind of like when one falls, it's going to go quick. And then what are we going to do? And it goes back to having enough subs and having the kids bring it home. And we know that kids are sent to school when they're sick because the parents have to go to work. And I just really wonder, is it going to be any better in this particular situation? Are they really going to keep their kids home like they're supposed to? I don't know. I just really struggle with this as well. I'm concerned about staff and what's going to happen there. I don't know. And I agree with you, Walter. This is not something that should be put on us to figure out.
Exactly. And it shouldn't be put on the administrators of the school district either, because again, I don't know anybody in our school board that has a medical degree. But even if you had a medical degree, there are doctors disagreeing with each other as well. So,
Exactly. Like I said, you can find somebody that says yes and somebody that says no.
Exactly. So that's why I've spent a lot of time talking to people. I don't know if I've been talking to the right people, let's be honest. But at least it made me feel a little bit better about my decision, where I feel we can open school safely. And again, I have a feeling the way the vote is going to go, I'm going to be on the opposing side of the decision, but I will support whatever decision the board makes, as I always have. I think we have a board that at the end of the day, I think we all want to make sure kids are safe, staff is safe, as safe as possible, right? Because if anybody leaves their house to go to Mariano's or a grocery store or Home Depot or goes to the park, there is always a risk, whether it's COVID or the flu or a myriad of other issues. I just think back to even, where you had polio, decades ago. You don't have widespread closings. You had select schools closing, etc. I actually did some research on that, but thank God this is not polio, because that is, I think, much worse than COVID. But nevertheless, one is when will we go back to school? Because the more districts that decide to go virtual, the tougher it's going to be to actually open up, because they'll be like, well, we're still 3%. Well, we're still 2.5%. Well, we still have cases. Well, now we need a vaccine. Well, now we have a vaccine, but not everybody's vaccinated. That is my biggest concern, that we are not necessarily, and there are, 50, 60% plus of parents saying, I'm willing to take a calculated chance because I feel it's safe enough. And there's plenty of staff as well that are willing to take, a calculated approach of this as well. Not only in our district, just districts in general. I have talked to some teachers as well outside of our district, and some administrators. But, again, it's not 100%. There's not 100% on either side of this. And I'm guessing we could debate this for hours and probably still not totally agree.
And I think another thing that we can keep in mind is maybe we look at this as the plan going forward through the end of the year. And maybe we revisit it down the road based on what happens. I don't know. Because it's not like this is set in stone that we have to live with this forever, which is the other thing.
Agreed. I agree. I still cannot support it, but I think maybe it should be brought back up for a vote in 60 days to see if we want to make changes on the metrics or anything like that based on current conditions, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it will get much better, but the reality is it may not.
Yeah.
I think I'm sorry, Kay. I think that's a really good suggestion, Walter, to do a review maybe 60 days in.
Yeah, because then we can reevaluate if the metrics are the right metrics and all that stuff. At least it'll allow us, whether some of us change our mind or not 60 days from now, who knows? But at least it allows us to take a look and see what's working, not working, etc. There might be tweaks to the general plan as well.
And something that Katie had brought up and we had discussed before, the fact that there may not be a vaccine. To me, I'm hoping more for better treatments. And that, to me, would make it easier for me to say, yeah, I think we should open, and make me feel a little bit better. And I have a feeling they're going to come up with better treatments before and if they ever come up with a vaccine. And that's kind of my thinking, too, about revisiting this down the road.
And Shannon,
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Katie.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Katie's been trying to speak.
It's okay. I appreciate that perspective that we revisit it. I agree with Walter. I'm not naive enough to think that my perspective is going to be the majority. But I do think that when I look at this, I think there's two ways to look at it. There's the short term, and then there's the longer term viewpoint. And with the short term, obviously by September 20th, I would love it if all the kindergartners would be able to go back to their classroom. Whether or not we could meet those metrics, I think it's probably not realistic. For the long term, when I think, okay, well, I would be okay if September 20th we didn't make it. Maybe we'd make it by October 20th. When I think long term, and I think there's probably not a possibility that we're going to meet those metrics by the end of the school year. And that is the part that really gives me pause, because I think about the mental repercussions, the social repercussions, the educational repercussions that could come after 8 months of online learning. So I would really appreciate being able to revisit this after we have, and I hope that in the next, as the school year starts, we didn't have the data of who was successfully completing their work from the spring. I hope that we will have that data to look at. I think the plan of how we're going to contact the families is beautiful. I think it's wonderful. I think it's well laid out. I hope that we can provide some data with that so that we as a board can make a more informed decision in 30, 60 days, whatever, based on how we reach out to those kids that aren't being successful in this format. Because like I said, long term, I'm very concerned about the repercussions to the children and their families of staying remote learning.
And I just want to echo that Katie, you're absolutely right, and that is what causes me pause and conflict. As I said, the conflict is doing what we know is best, but yet at the same time doing what we know is right from a safety perspective, and that's very hard to reconcile those two. And I hate to say this, but it will be very interesting to see, and not just in our area, but as other schools, even the Catholic schools or other schools across the country, as they open, perhaps we can get more data from that to see what's working, what's not working, which will, when we do revisit in 60 days, is only going to give us more information.
I would just hope that on a regular basis, we're going to get data on the at-risk population and reports from our social workers and our psychologists on how things are going. And if we really see some disturbing trends, that we do step back and really consider what's going on. So I hope that we will get regular metrics based on a lot of the things that we're talking about and that are in the plan, so we can monitor this and come up with our own data and what's working and what's not working. As well, Alex, is what you said, what's going on in the rest of the country and even the Archdiocese. I agree. And I'm concerned, Katie, too, about long-term. I agree. It can't go on for years. I agree.
I also would like to go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, all right. I just wanted to add in that although I don't agree with the plan, I want to absolutely thank all the people that participate. Great. It is a very solid virtual plan. I just don't happen to agree with starting virtually, but I do want to thank everybody who participated. This was hours and hours of work, both to create this plan, the hybrid plan that we're not executing today. It is not something anybody probably signed up for. I'm pretty sure nobody, it feels like we're living through a movie in some ways that nobody signed up for. So I do absolutely appreciate all the work that went in, and my vote does not go against all the work that went into this. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Thank you, Walter. We understand.
Duly noted. Thank you.
I agree with that. I have an aside that I'm just going to throw out there. I remember I believe it was last year in the fall, a lot of us attended the North Cook Division dinner meeting, and they spoke on, I believe it was in the fall, they spoke on mental health, and that a lot of families receive their assistance and their help for mental health issues with their children through the schools. And so it's one thing that I would really like to kind of push to the forefront of people's minds of how we can help from afar for those children that might be struggling. Sorry. It's a regular thing now.
It's okay.
We've had a personal experience of a friend of a family who committed suicide, and I think those middle schoolers are at such a tender age. So I just hope that there's some things that we can do to reach out to them to kind of offset the negative parts.
Absolutely. That's what the plan is about, is making sure that we're staying connected with all those kids and checking in.
Anything else? Anything that has just popped into your heads that you want to, because it just seems these days this is not changing on a daily basis, but I know for me it's multiple times a day. So
I would just like to say I like the idea of revisiting it, and I agree with you guys where you're saying this shouldn't be the board or the administration's decision to make, because we are not medical experts. But that being said, all the medical experts don't agree either. I mean, Walter, you mentioned some medical experts that you talk to. Well, every morning, Dr. Murphy on WGN comes and says, no, if you would have said a month ago, yes, I would have said go back to school. But, just this morning he said no. A month ago, I would have said yes. Today, I'm saying no, you shouldn't go back to school. And I know that other schools are doing it. Archdiocese is completely different. It's like apples and oranges. They have, 15 kids in a class, not 25. It's a different situation. Wisconsin and Indiana are worse off than we are. So I'm not surprised that they're saying they're going back. Their numbers are worse than ours are. They're totally going in the wrong direction, is really what it boils down to. Right now, our numbers are going in the wrong direction. And I don't feel comfortable putting our kids and our staff in that situation because they are not medical experts. And I know doctors and nurses are going back to work and have been working through this entire thing. But our staff and our students are not doctors and nurses. They don't have the equipment for that. They are not trained on how to protect themselves that way, besides wearing a mask and washing their hands, which, yes, in normal circumstances does work, but not when we are fitting, 700 kids in some buildings, 25 in a classroom. I just don't think we would be doing the right thing at this point. I like the idea of revisiting the numbers to see where it's going because, yes, we may have a vaccine, we may not. Who's going to take it? Who doesn't? How does it get distributed? Those are questions that are not answered yet. It could be a long time before we're able to even get the vaccine once it's out there. But the treatment programs are getting better every day. They're coming up with more medicines to work. They're coming up with more treatments in the hospitals. And those that are getting infected aren't requiring as much hospitalization. But the bottom line is there are still deaths. The deaths are still out there. And some of those deaths are children. And I don't think anybody wants that over their head. If it's one death in our district, that's one death too many and one death that could have been avoided. So the plan as it is now, I think is the best that we're going to have. And to revisit that in 60 days or whatever our timeline is going to be to see how the state is doing and how our area is doing, because that's really what we want to look at on our area. And then we can change the plan. If it's like, okay, we've been steady and everybody's doing good and the areas around, the schools around us, haven't reported any problems and the hospitals around us are doing great too. They haven't had any issues. Then I think we can bring the kids back faster. But I really think that so many people, and I was one of them at the beginning, are so desperate and anxious to go back to a sense of normalcy and what they view normalcy was in your school district, that they're not seeing it realistically on how that's going to be. And to have those kids come back to school wearing masks and having to militantly get off the bus, go to your classroom, stay 6 feet away from each other. You can't touch anything. You can't do that. And then that's not what their normal was before. And to have your little kindergartner, your little first grader, your little second grader who is crying because they're upset because they miss home or they're scared or they just don't like seeing everybody in masks or they're just having a hard day and they start crying. And what can the teacher do or their friends but say, it's okay, honey, stay over there and keep your mask on. You'll be okay. Get yourself a tissue because they can't hug them. That's going to be more traumatic and more of a lasting damage to that child and those who have to witness it than staying at home for a few months and doing some e-learning. That we can bounce back from. We can't bounce back from the trauma that these kids are going to do when they go into school and nobody, they can't be consoled. I mean, we talk about the little kids all the time. Yeah, that's most important. But there's fifth graders that sometimes need a hug. There's eighth graders that sometimes need a hug. That's a lot of days I need a hug. I mean, and that just isn't going to be able to happen. And we have to be realistic about that, even though we want normalcy so much and we want to go back to that. It's just not now. And we have to go with what we have. So that's all I have.
Other board members that want to share their thoughts, or any administrators?
You know, I would just say that listening to everybody has a great point of view. And really, everybody is accurate in so many ways. I just feel like we just, you know what? The world does not know really what to do here. I think that's what's coming out here. You know, we did have a lot of school districts that were planning to go back, and now they're not. You know, I think we said at the beginning that this decision was always going to be based on safety. And I think, unfortunately, we can't say for sure what is safe or what isn't safe at this moment. So I agree with Sheila, you know, and a lot of others that have said waiting another 60 days at this point and revisiting is probably the best avenue. And it will give us the opportunity to see what a District 30 or a District 28 faces by opening. You know, I hope that it works beautifully, and that can be our avenue to look at opening in a faster fashion. But I think to be out there now and to try to spearhead going back to school when there's so much uncertainty is just not the best avenue to pursue right now. So I do applaud the administration for what you have done to prepare for this. It is not easy. There is no easy answer. And quite honestly, I keep thinking about what Lewis said last Monday when he said, you know what? Kids that come to middle school are so interested in the social aspect and the happiness of being there, and that will not happen in that setting initially. It will be militant. And is that what we want our kids to be experiencing? And as we said too, with the kindergartners and the first graders and the second graders, there is no way to provide that really nurturing approach that hopefully by being home, they can receive that. There is no good decision, but I think based upon the fact that we have approached this from a point of safety, I think we're making the best move by starting out with remote learning.
I'll just chime in. I agree with Tom and Sheila. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here. We don't know the best way to do things. But I mean, I have 2 kids at the middle school, and you know, when I tell them the plan, if they were to go back, they don't want to go, knowing that, you know, it is militant, like you guys have said, and they wouldn't even look forward to that because it's not the life as we know it. And the little kids that I with Sheila, like I agree with the little kids. I mean, it's scary as a kindergartner on the first day of school anyway. And then to see a teacher in a mask and you can't console them, and kids are scared to go to school. It's sometimes their first time away from home, and it could be scary. So I want my kids back in school just as much as anybody else. But I think I agree with everyone that it's safety. And we got to do what's the safest thing right now.
Okay. Any other points of view before I correctly ask for motion? Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone, to our community members for providing feedback to us. You know, it's hard, and I think everyone has echoed their there is no perfect answer, and I wish there was a perfect answer. I wish that we did not have to make this decision, but alas, here we are. And I know, and I just know that the decision that we will make will be in the best interest of our students and their families. So having said that, could I please have a motion to approve the Safely Back to School plan as presented?
Can I just ask a question real quick? When you say as presented, I mean, I think we talked about some things now. We're looking for regular metrics reporting. We're looking at, in the near future, 60 days or whatever, that we're going to review this. I mean, how do we incorporate that into this motion? Or do you just want me to say that?
I think it's a motion to approve as amended with a 60-day review and frequent data presentations or something along those lines.
And I would just bring up that possibly we look at a calendar and make sure 60 days is the right number of days that we want. 60 days might put us past the October board meeting, just barely. We might want to do it before then, or I don't know. I'd leave that up to the group to decide. Maybe we look specifically.
I was thinking just saying 2 months, maybe just do the October board meeting. That'll be less than 60 days of school, but yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, let me try this and help me out here, because, okay, for now, and thank you for those comments. They're very important. So could I please have a motion to approve the Safely Back to School plan as presented, which includes metrics, which includes updates on data, which includes the flow charting of at-risk students, which includes all of our diverse learners, ELLs, safety, etc.
And an October review.
Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Sack?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Gluskin?
No.
Okay, and that motion passes. And again, thank you to everyone. Okay. Could I please have a motion to approve the revised 2020-2021 school calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Clay?
Yes, this seems to be something that we're going to keep doing probably every month, is changing our calendar as things change. But one thing that we discovered is, since we're doing just 5 hours of instruction, we no longer are able to bank any time for our school improvement days, which is our early release days. So for as long as we're on this schedule, we won't be able to have any of those days in our calendar.
Okay, any questions, board members?
No, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Sack?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
And Ms. Urban?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Could I please have a motion to approve the MOA for the EMEA 2020-2021 performance evaluations?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Clay?
Yeah, so we are asking you to approve this to allow us to only evaluate those teachers that we feel like we absolutely have to this year. That would be teachers who received a needs improvement rating last year, and a few probationary teachers that may be identified by the principals or other administrators. We don't feel that, especially in a remote learning environment, that this is something that we can do effectively, observing and evaluating teachers. And even if we come back in the hybrid model, we just feel like we want our teachers and our principals to be focusing on actually taking care of the kids and not this if we don't have to right now.
Any questions, board members? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Zeck?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
Ms. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
And Ms. Brooke?
Yes. And that motion passes. Could I please have a motion to approve the Consolidated District Plan, or the CDP?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Roberson, do you mind providing a little bit of background here?
Sure. Board members, this is very similar to what began last school year, but through the Illinois State Board of Education, for all of the grant money that we receive, the state now requires us to complete a consolidated district plan. Really, the focus is that all of our different grants kind of fall under the same goals, so we're moving in the same direction. So this is just a copy of the consolidated district plan that we have to submit. And you're welcome to review it, very similar to what we did last year.
Actually, I just have a question. And this is not something I've looked up, has ISB provided any guidance regarding testing?
So currently they have not. I believe Ms. Sterling and I were just talking about, we have not received any information about access testing. Okay. We have not received any information about the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. I do know in terms of testing locally, we usually take the measures of academic progress or the MAP assessment 3 times a year. So currently in the fall, we are not taking that assessment. Should we go back to some sort of hybrid instruction, we would resume our winter testing at that time. But the state, unfortunately, sometimes isn't always communicating as quickly as we would like. Right. So as soon as I find out, we can communicate that to all of you.
Okay, thank you. I just, was wondering. Inquiring minds want to know. So
I am too. So
yeah. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Zeck?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
Ms. Urban? Yes. Okay. Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
And Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Could I please have a motion to approve the unpaid leave of absence request?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
Ms. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
And Ms. Zeck?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Okay. Could I please have a motion to approve the first reading, which is a revision to policy 220, school board meeting procedure?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Dr. Clay, do you want to just a standard first reading? Does anybody have any questions or anything at this point?
This is pretty much just laying out what we're doing right now, why it's okay, and that stuff.
Excellent. All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
Ms. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Sack?
Yes.
And Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay, and that motion passes. Could I please have a motion to approve a revision to policy 4180, pandemic preparedness, management, and recovery? Again, first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Sack?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
And Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Okay, could I please have a motion to approve an adoption to policy 7345, use of educational technologies, student data privacy and security?
So moved.
And again, this is a first reading, sorry.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Brooke?
Yes.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Sack?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
And Ms. Urban?
Yes.
And that motion passes. Okay. Could I please have a motion to adjourn our regular business meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Kaczkowski?
Yes.
Ms. Sack?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Gluskin?
Yes.
Ms. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
And Ms. Brooke?
Yes. That motion passes. We are adjourned. And the next, let me just make sure I get the date correct. Our next regular business meeting of the Board of Education will take place on Thursday, September 3rd, 2020 at 7 p.m. Thank you all for joining us and have a nice evening.